our select board meeting in the Arcan meeting room. And as customary, would you please stand as we honor America by pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Chilly out there tonight, isn't it? It's October. Tonight we have some folks from Claire's Way. Mr. Dill?
Yes.
Join us up front, please. Yes, please. Thank you. Absolutely.
Mr. Dill used to sit on this side of the table. Remember
I did many days.
Many years ago, huh?
Very many.
What?
All right.
I don't have another iPad to put on there.
Who needs one? You
I
can
know,
take
but
mine.
I have to sign them into Zoom.
Okay. We'll wait a sec.
You want me to start? You want me to wait for
I'm
that?
just gonna wait for, yeah,
Sorry.
Okay,
that's okay, no problem. Well, thanks for coming in tonight. If you would please state your name and your address for our records and.
Absolutely. So my name is Richard Dill. I reside at 2 Claire's Way in Bellingham. I'm here with my wife Carol over to my right and my sister-in-law Debbie Kuchar on my left. Debbie lives at 1 Claire's Way.
Okay.
We're here primarily, I'll make this short. We received a letter from Don DiMartino a while back stating that due to the fact that our Claire's Way was plowed by a neighbor, Mr. Arkian, and due to Mr. Arkian's passing, he would no longer honor and no longer have it plowed. My primary basis for being here tonight is that to state that Mr. Arkian did not plow, and it was not like unknown to Don and it was being done. There were many occasions by which, Debbie would have called and say, hey, we need it plowed or we need it sanded. And they would say, let me talk to Don and get back to you, and a truck would come up. A little bit more history of Claire's Way. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Sportsman's Club off of Lake Street. So Claire's Way is a dirt road. It's a paper road. Carol and I came in '94 and had it subdivided, and it was the request of the planning board at the time to make it a paper road and show that it could be a street. Way prior to that, 1 Claire's Way, which was one of 367 Lake Streets, went up through Arkian's property. In the mid '80s, Debbie and Carol's father moved that and came straight down to Lake Street. So that was always a drive where it was always plowed. And I was told way back in the day it was for emergency access. If they had to get the ambulance or something up there, that's the way to do it. Since that time, the 22 years Carol and I have been there, it's still always been plowed. Not my driveway, but Claire's Way has always been plowed. So, we just don't understand why all of a sudden it's coming to cease now. Is it because of Mr. Arkian's passing? It wasn't, this town knew it was being plowed and it's always plowed. We're just curious as to why. And let me just
Sure.
one thing. I reached out to Mike Soto, talked to Mike. Mike said to reach out to Dennis. I reached out to Dennis. Dennis brought us to here now. Doing a little bit of research. I'm no lawyer and I don't pretend to be a lawyer. Just looking at the general laws in the chapter 46D and see you folks have the ability to say whether a private way is to be plowed or snow removed and ice removal. So I'll pause there for a minute. Do you have anything you want to add?
No.
Wow, I did pretty good on my own.
Dennis, you were going to say
I was
something?
going to say the board does have copies of that letter. I know Dawn is joined us virtually. Dawn, do you want to offer any comment on this?
No, I mean, I was literally under the impression that it was done for years because Roland took his truck home and was plowing an adjacent driveway. And we weren't going to just pull the rug out from underneath him by any means. So it is, as far as I know, the only private way that the town plows, and there are several in town. And several not dissimilar to Claire's Way, where it's a road, that's a private road. With driveways off of it that we do not plow. So that's sort of it's again to my knowledge, it's the only private road we plow. If the select board chooses to continue to plow, we'll continue to plow it. But we've also always sort of been doing it under, it's like, well, we always have, Roland lives there. We're not gonna just leave him out in the lurch. We sent them a letter in May. So yeah, whatever you want to do.
May I speak?
Yeah, yes,
Roland
please.
doesn't live there. 2 separate driveways.
Pardon me? There's 2 Claire's Way, correct?
No, one
There's
is
2 roads there.
where Roland lived,
Yeah.
his driveway, there's 2 houses there, Roland was at the top. Claire's Way is right next to it, goes all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
But Roland didn't plow it the majority of the time. He maybe plowed it a handful of times. Most of the time, it was like the water department, or whoever drives the sander. So it was DPW who plowed it, not Roland.
So it's not Roland's driveway then, I think that was the. so
Correct.
there's two,
Exactly.
two
There's
roads,
two
there's
separate-
Claire's
Yeah,
Way
there are.
next to Roland's driveway.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So I did go down there because wasn't sure. And I saw two roads. I saw one Claire's Way. It looked like it was Claire's Way, but there was two roads. Which road is Roland's? The one on the
right.
left, the right?
If you're looking at
If
the
I'm
two
looking at it
driveways,
from across the street, yes, Mr.
the
Dill.
Claire's Way actually has a street sign on it.
I saw this, I
Yeah,
saw the
that's
street
Claire's Way.
sign.
The one on the
That's
left.
where I went down to take a look. And Roland's house was
On the
Other
right.
driveway.
at
on the
end of
right.
driveway
So
on the
Claire's
right.
Way is on the left.
Correct.
Okay.
Don, is this a paper street to your
Yes.
knowledge, or is it?
Yeah, it's not a town accepted way. I don't know what the status is, you know, that, there's really no such thing as a paper street. The abutters own to the center line of the street. It's not a town, it's not
Explain
a town
what
way.
paper street means
It
to me,
means that it's
please.
not accepted, it's shown on.
Okay,
they
fair
originally
enough.
Shown on a map.
On the maps.
Right, like we
Yeah.
have streets that aren't accepted, they go before town meeting, they get accepted.
So is
We
there
had
a-
to show the planning board that we could make a road with a cul-de-sac accessible and meet the requirements for each of the lots, and we got waivers that we didn't have to plow, pave it. We didn't have to put water up there or any other utilities, it was just our two houses.
Mrs. Grant, do you have any questions?
No, I know
No.
where
Okay,
it is and I just pulled up the map to
Okay.
refresh, so.
So is there a reason why we wouldn't go through the motions of making it not a paper street?
Well, in
Well,
order
I
to
mean, I
do
know it's
that,
gotta go to town meeting.
Would have to
but-
be
Well,
paved.
typically, you'd have the property owners or the developer bring it up to town standards, and I'm sure there's no way you wanna. You'd have to pave it, the width of a roadway, those types of things would all have to be accomplished. so.
and that wouldn't be on the town's dime, that would be on the owner's dime.
Exactly.
The developer.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's not something you guys wanna do at this point? Okay, just wanna clarify that.
We could get an opinion from town council on this if you'd like.
Maybe Dennis, would know, how many other streets do we have like this in town?
Just gonna ask that.
Do you know, Don?
Well, I'm just trying to pull up, I know there's one further down, Lake Street, John's Way. It's escaping me where, there's another one off of Hartford Street, I believe, right near the fields. That's actually almost a finished to almost subdivision level. It was never town accepted, it isn't plowed. I'm trying to pull it up on the map right now.
Just a question though, isn't John's Way two paved driveways going to two separate houses?
Well, again, that's the case in some places. I'm trying to pull the map up.
Because those aren't paper roads and they were never developed, I sat in that meeting,
Right.
so I know what it is.
They were developed in much the same, the same fashion that they were approved for lots, but they weren't ever built to be a subdivision road or a town accepted street.
So, I mean,
Go ahead. Sure.
two things come to mind. I mean, one, if, hindsight being 2020, we probably never should have started to plow it. And the second thing, and maybe that's somewhat of a driver, we just finished approving the last unapproved road in town, which was Rogers
Rogers
Street,
Street,
Rogers
yeah.
Way. Which was the last subdivision lots that we were legally responsible to take ownership of. And now we're at the point where we don't have any others. Now this is up at the forefront, so it just strikes me.
So I do have a question for Don, if I could. So Don, this has been going back in
From before I was here.
1991, and maybe Roland didn't physically plow Claire's Way, but it was certainly known, from what I understand, that Roland would plow his, and they took care of yours. And it was just more of a convenience. We're here, we'll just take care of it. But it was, so it may not have been him physically, but it was probably at his direction, Don. Don, was this at Roland's direction is where I'm going? I'm not trying to lead you here, but I don't know why we would plow it if it wasn't a town accepted road, because we typically wouldn't do that. Yes, please.
We've been plowed since we moved there. So we've
I-
been plowed for like 54 years. It's just-
Yes, it's been plowed since I was there. I've asked the question and, you know, it generally was Roland that answered it. It says, yeah, we plow it because I plow my driveway. I mean, that's literally my recollection as to why it came down. He plows his driveway and he plows the road next to it.
As stated earlier, there were many occasions where Debbie would actually call DPW if she needed sanding because it was too slippery or plowing. You spoke, you could say.
I would call them, you know, and they would come. I didn't call Roland to do it. I called the DPW.
I said, we'll check with Don and then we'll find out what happens and then we got plow or sand.
But
It's been on our plow routes for all those years. The question is why, and, you know, it's, you know, we don't plow, it's Pinecrest Way, which is off of Hartford, which I believe is, I can't seem to get the picture of, but which I believe is another one in town. There are a few. There's a shared single driveway off of Rawson Road that people are always asking if we will plow it. And we don't. We never have started and we don't plan to start. So
I think
again,
there's
if you have authority to do it, it's not the end of the world. It just seems, well, you know, we don't do everybody's driveway. Why, you know, we don't do everybody's private road. Why?
The thing that strikes me is if we do yours, we should be doing everyone else's.
Well, that's an interpretation, obviously, but not everybody else has been done for 50-something years. And I think the clear distinction here is let's not call it a driveway. It's Claire's Way. It went through a subdivision process, become a road, and was waived the other things by the town of Bellingham to make it a paved utility road. We had all the waivers and those things. Granted, I agree. I'm not saying that, you know, it should be out paving, plowing people's driveways.
Would you expect us to repave it?
Want to go there, Dennis?
Just say no.
No, no. No, I would not.
Yeah, it's not paved now, right?
No.
Yeah, it's not paved.
No.
It's a gravel road.
And listen, as a gesture, okay, my wife and Debbie and I were talking at dinner tonight. If it's something that was just done, and I know there are things that get done in the towns, but can be put a stop to in lieu, or let's just say that Debbie or I sold our house. We would put it as a condition in our deed that the town would no longer maintain or plow. Because technically, the more you really look into it, subdivisions sometimes have HOAs, and we over on town.
No,
It's okay, it's okay.
They usually have like HOAs, and you can put together now houses that banks are so strict, they're making them put together funds for road repair and stuff like that. So moving forward, that was something that Debbie and Carol and I agreed that we would put in our deed that. Just that I'm not around that much. I plow it myself, but you know, most of the time we're up in New Hampshire. Debbie's up by herself, and that's the main concerns. I don't want my driveway touched. I just want to make sure that she has access to get in and out.
You have any questions?
No, I'm just listening.
Do we have any other private ways in town that are,
We've had unaccepted
Plowed, like-
roads that we have, certainly we've had unaccepted roads that we've paved.
okay.
You know, what, as Rick's referring it to a private way, if it is a paper street, certainly we have done that in the past. That
Yeah.
was obviously, if we've been doing it for 54 years. then
Yeah, it's,
this is
That's the
history.
thing.
to me, if this was something that, if it really was Roland was doing as a favor, and even if he asked someone to do it for you, that's one thing, but the precedent was set 54 years ago. We've always done it. If you call the DPW to sand and salt, to me, I just don't see a reason why we should just stop. But I appreciate the gesture and think that would be appropriate to put in your deed. I do. And I would ask that you would do that if we vote in favor of.
Sure, and I think from Don's perspective, just so you know, Don's trying to keep it clean and that,
Yep.
I get
you know, it is a private way.
Yeah.
and it is the, you know, the board should be aware of it. if
Mhm.
we're gonna have something like that.
But to your point, Mr. Chairman, 50 plus years of plowing, it is more than just a favor. It's the
Ron was
precedent's
in the
been set.
department for 60, so.
Right.
And he lived there that whole
Yeah.
time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, that's going back, that's probably what he did. As because, you know, the demands 54 years ago probably aren't what they are today.
I don't know.
You know, and that's
I
a
get it.
challenge, right? I mean, it's not one, you know, Mechanic Street, you know. If it hasn't been plowed right away, I would expect that you'd have to, you know, very nicely ask you to be patient. You're not a primary road, you're,
oh, yes,
Right.
and I've
you follow
tolerated
me?
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, you should
Yes.
tolerate it. We've
Yeah.
been plowing your road for free for
Exactly, yes,
54 years.
I never have a problem with that, never,
You know?
never.
Seriously, I mean, it almost at first, my initial reaction, honestly, was you should be thankful we've been doing it for 54
Oh, yes,
years. Now
I
it's
am.
time to find someone to do it. But I mean, that, I don't want to be hardcore, but at the same time, we've been doing it for 54 years.
So I have one question, actually. It's, so you said they usually come in and plow it, and, but they have been plowing it.
Yeah.
Every snowstorm?
Unless, well, unless we have a couple inches, that it
Okay.
usually just gets sanded.
So if it didn't, and then you call DPW and they have been doing it, no question asked, they come in and just do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's been-
that's a question.
It's been on our routes. I mean, we've had it on the plow routes. Again, it's not, I don't deny that we've been plowing it, and we, you know, if we didn't plow it like any other buddy on the street that's on a route, we'd go up and plow it if we hadn't got there. Or usually if we haven't gotten there, it's a new vendor or somebody who doesn't know what they, you know, covering their sub, but yeah, we don't, it's on our plow routes. It's just a matter of, okay, why is this private street on the plow routes and none of the other private streets in town? And we don't plow condos, we don't plow. Again, it's not a big deal. I just, especially as I'll be moving on soon, I want to be able to say to somebody, the Board of Selectmen voted on XYZ date, we're plowing the street, so it's good.
And I understand from sitting on that side of the table that
Yeah.
you know, you're looking to be consistent across the board in the town, and this is something else that we had discussed, saying, look, you can understand you want to be consistent. So that's why we decided we could put it in the deed as an option to make it clear, you know, so people, nobody else come forward and say, well, why am I getting done? Well, they've been doing it 50 years. That's part of that property ownership. When that goes away, so does that right to the town to plow it.
Mrs. Grant, did you have a question?
So I was just going to bring up that fact. It's not like we are adding an additional burden by doing this because it's already on the route. It's essentially already assigned to a plow. It's already on the route. And I understand the opposite of like, it's been the precedent, but setting a precedent the other way. But I mean, I just consider to keep doing it.
Mr. Connors, did you have a question? You started to say something.
So I am concerned about the other streets that we don't do. So our options won't be to say no, but I think our council should tell us whether 50 years creates any
Legal precedent.
legal precedent and what liability we take on in the event that we continue. And particularly if they were to write in subject to any change of ownership.
Yeah, we can.
I mean, it doesn't get a decision tonight, but I recognize 50 years. I recognize change of ownership. But I also wonder if we're going to have other residents come up and say, well, you did it for Claire's Way. Does that get us in trouble with council in any way? And that's why I would ask council to advise us.
Like, do you have the residents of John's Way or Pinecrest Court coming and wanting the same thing? So that would be my concern as well.
And I think if we are pushed by council to say yes to anyone else, I think my answer would be no.
Correct.
And if they say, it's kind of like if you put up a fence and you're on your neighbor's property and it's been there for 20 years, the land kind of becomes yours somehow. But
Yeah, and when you use the word liability, I didn't even think, when we're plowing that, I've never been up your Claire's Way. I was out front and looked. Is there brush on either side? Could we be doing potentially property damage? But that's why I don't know. I'm just asking. So there's brush, whatever's on either side, because what we wouldn't want, because then have you come back and say, geez, you ding this up, you ding that up, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
Yep, no, there's nothing.
There's nothing.
Yeah,
I think we
ask the
should
question
defer.
if
And
there's
it
some
may
sort of
just be-
indemnification.
it may just be the indemnification that in
Yeah.
exchange for continuing this road for so long as we own this property, we hold Bellingham free and harmless.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Thanks
So-
for your time. Thanks for
Yeah, we're
listening.
not gonna make a decision tonight, but we will get back to you after we refer to
Before it
council.
snows.
Well, that, who knows the way it feels tonight, it could
Hopefully by our
snow
next
tonight.
meeting.
More snow.
Thank you all. for
You
your
don't
time.
have a
Appreciate
foot.
it.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
Thanks for all you
Thanks for
do.
coming in.
If you want to just vote no more snow, that's okay too.
Yeah, no more
He's
snows.
leaving.
Retire.
Retiring.
Congratulations, Don. Thanks for all your help.
I don't think you heard
Now
you.
plow our
Yeah.
driveway.
You're welcome, you're welcome.
Have a nice evening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, who's good at audio stuff? So she says, go to the computer, tap the gear icon on the top right corner, open settings. Hang on.
Let me see your face.
On video and select-
He was supposed to be on crowd control. And there was this committee that was going through.
Hillary, did you see my latest text that I just sent you?
Click on the, so on the microphone then, right? Microphone. So we should be selecting the speakers, relative, that's, so it's this one maybe? Don, try talking.
Hello, hello, hello.
No.
Test 1, 2, 3. Looks like
No.
my mic's jumping. No?
No, it says you're coming out of the computer instead of the TV. Follow the click on arrow up near mute, unmute.
You guys bailed on me this
We
morning.
did that, and that's what. So Pam, what should we be clicking on once I open this?
For the folks
So
watching.
what
on-
are the options there?
Audio correct.
So microphone, it says Realtek audio, microphone, same as system microphones, select a speaker, speakers, and then it says LC something, same as system,
Leave computer audio right there. You gotta,
leave computer, this one,
yeah,
leave that.
and I'm just assuming maybe if you just.
Whoa. What is under select a speaker?
Okay, there it is again. How about Dawn? Can you hear us now?
I can hear you. I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Well, we can hear
Yeah.
you. You're coming through the computer as opposed to the TV, so it's not loud. Hit the bottom where you check the speakers.
Hey, Hillary,
Yep,
the other day I turned the volume off on the TV, so hit the volume button.
we did that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Just turned it up again.
Yeah, you did, okay.
Can hear.
I can't hear him really that good either. She's saying, so this is what Karen said, if you hit the button where you check the speakers and microphone, AJO will show you
Yes.
audio options. Yeah,
Which
that's
is
what
what
we
we
were
had.
at, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What is blue snowball? Is that this?
Yeah, it's gotta be.
I have no idea,
That's different. It'd be a silver thing, right?
The big Larry King microphone.
I was gonna say, look like Larry King, or I was gonna say Frank Sinatra. I was really gonna dig myself. Back in the day, he'd hold it.
This is speaker,
You don't
right?
know what I'm talking about.
It would be one of these options, wouldn't it?
Anyway. How does through Karen?
How about now, Dawn?
Get it through the top.
Mary, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes, but it's a little. Oh, hi. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Cool. Normally I get more dressed up. I'm like, okay.
Sorry, Don, I took your thunder.
Oh, wait, we can't hear Dawn now.
Don, I can't hear
Just
you.
moving my lips.
Oh, you stinker. Did you see that? He's pretending.
Oh, you're a stinker.
But so Don, you're on at 7:10. We're 15 minutes late, so you have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Move,
Can I ask you a favor, though? Unless there's a reason to go into detail, can we just do high level,
Yep.
the things that you're looking for, so we don't
Okay.
spend 90 minutes?
Well, we'll move it as quickly as I can.
Thank you.
The first item is an additional, we've appropriated $75,000 for the effectively the design and bid document preparation for the 215 Depot Street. We're estimating $75,000 more. is required, although hopefully we'll have a number by the end of the week, because on the Friday, an architect was accepted. So right now it's a $75,000 request to complete the bid documents, design and bid documents for the DPW office at 215 Depot Street.
Don, who was the architect that
Was-
accepted the
it was
project?
Cuthrenary.
It's Cuthrenary, okay, and they're the local
They-
ones.
Yeah, the gentleman, Rob, I forget his last name, is in the Franklin office, and then the woman is
Out of California.
California.
Yeah,
So just to pause for a second, Don, just for the folks that are watching on television, we're actually reviewing the capital items for our fall town meeting for the DPW. So Don's taking us through the request. Okay, Don, go ahead.
Okay, the next FY 23 is the underground storage tank removal, which is not a town meeting item. It's a ARPA item. I don't know if you want to address that tonight, Mary, or you want to?
no.
Nope, we're good.
Okay, yeah, and that actually came in well under, I think we're under $700,000. We were estimating close to 900. So let's see, next item is the easement acquisition for the Hartford Ave project, I-495 to Arrowhead. This is a project which we've got a Mass Works request in for. The $800,000 cost is actually from appraisals and includes that we would be paying Meehan, because there was an offer on the table and we have not received anything to indicate that that offer is still good. $800,000 requested. Am I just gonna you're gonna vote one at a time? You're gonna just go for it? Let me keep flying through.
Yeah, keep rolling,
Yeah,
Don.
we'll
Okay.
vote at the end.
Okay, next one, fiscal 2003, we get into, I believe we get into vehicles, and I'm gonna pass out over to Jesse. Unmute.
All right, the vehicles here. So the first we have up on the list here is a new request. This would be for a mechanic's service truck. Actually, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
we hear you.
All right, excellent. This is for a new truck. This is for an F-350 4x4 Super Cab. Price estimate on this is $95,000, although we haven't received a recent quote from our vendor. This is somewhat of a random estimate at this point. The official quote will be sent once the DPW receives the state bid quotation. The comments on this new vehicle here is that we are routinely short vehicles, leaving the mechanics with nothing other than an old sedan or SUV to go into on-site repairs of vehicles.
So Jesse, this is not a replacement. This is a completely new truck, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next.
Okay, the next vehicle up on this list is for a replacement for B2. B2 is a DPW supervisor pickup truck. This vehicle currently has about 156,000 miles on it, 14 years in age, with lots of body rot. Estimated lifespan on this is going to be 12 to 15 years. Current year is 2008. This again is somewhat of a random estimate. Quotes will be sent when the DPW receives the state bid quotation.
So Jesse, this is Kelly. You guys have not received any quotes back yet from MHQ?
That is correct.
Okay.
The next vehicle up on the list here is for B4. This is a CDL vehicle. It's a 6-wheel salt plow dump truck. This vehicle has an estimated useful life of 15 years. Estimate on this here is $308,600. It's an international. Mechanics notes on this: mileage is 33,027 miles with 2,602 hours. This vehicle has extensive body rust and rot, starting to cost a lot in repairs. It is very unreliable. Maintenance cost per year has been roughly $5,271 per year. And actually, I'm sorry, this vehicle, the state bid quotation combines received for the Freightliner. This one we did actually receive a quote for. I apologize.
Jesse, what,
Yes.
if this is approved, what happens with the existing vehicle? Will that be put out to auction or is it beyond auction?
Yes, this would go out to auction, the existing vehicle.
The existing vehicle would, okay. Do
Yes.
you have any, I mean, I'm not expecting, you know, what the dollar amount would be, but is it auctionable? I mean, is it in a decent enough shape that some town or somebody would purchase this vehicle and put some money into it?
We've had similar vehicles go up for auction, and surprisingly enough, we have had you know, people bid on them and purchase them. So I would be fairly confident that this would be a vehicle that we would get something back for.
But none of that, we've been using an online auction service, which has brought in, I would say, about 8 times the dollar value. Granted, 8 times the, you know, we probably would have got about $2,000 for this. We may get 15 or 16 when we go to sell it. All of our surplus auction funds go into the general fund. So it's not like it goes back towards this truck or it's enough of a value to do a trade-in type thing.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Okay. Next up on the list is a replacement for B13. B13 is our tree truck. It's an F350 wood chip 4x4. Estimated useful life on this vehicle is 12 to 15 years. We estimate the replacement cost on this to be about $90,000. This is currently a 3500 pickup with wood body, chip body on it. It's a Chevy 2007. Mechanics notes on this is that it's got 23,000 miles, 15 years old. It has low mileage, but lots of rust and rots. Again, on this one, somewhat of a random estimate. The quote will be sent when the DPW receives the state bid quotation.
Any questions? No? Okay.
Okay, the next item for fiscal 23 is $550,000 for the TIP engineering for the reconstruction of Hartford Ave from the Medway Town line to the cemetery just before the plazas. This is, we've just got approval from the Mass DOT or Project Review Committee that the project is acceptable to them for us to proceed. Our next responsibility is to fund the 100% design, which is that's the number we're looking at now, although it's early in the process, not unusual for us to come back and need additional funds. But that's based on our engineer's proposal from April to do the design up to or close to the PS&E, which is the plan specs and an estimate right before construction. And this is, if you're familiar with, I'm sure you're familiar with the TIP, it's about a 5 to 7 year process. It's roughly a 90% grant. We will have in the future the need to acquire the right of way, and we've got that actually sort of pegged for 2027. So easements, right of ways, and so forth will be included in that part of our requirement, as well as the engineering.
Any questions? So Don, what's the total? Your request?
The total on that is $550,000. The Mass DOT cost estimate for the project is over 10 million right now.
Okay.
They just published out. That makes me believe that this number will possibly go up because it's not unusual to be sitting right around the 8 or 10% for the engineering, and we're only about 5% with appropriation that we're requesting. But it's enough to get us started in the process, and you need to start in the process. You need to continue on the process to get the project in a position that it can be put onto the tip and actually constructed.
Okay. So the total you're requesting, I'm looking at the handout here, it's 2.8, roughly 2.8 million. 28706 for FY23. Do I have that right?
Can't be looking at the right.
Nope. So there's been some, if I might.
Yep, please.
So the master sheets have been updated to reflect some changes. Right now, Don, to answer your question, the total DPW request is 1.976 million.
Okay. So
Because
Mary, what I have here is version 3. Is that
right? So You're looking at the 2.8 over to the far right-hand
Right.
column? Okay,
Yes.
what that is including is the underground storage tank removal project of $894,000.
Mhm.
That is scheduled to be funded with ARPA funding,
Okay,
so that will not go to town meeting.
I'm with you. I see it. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions?
I'm not comfortable voting anything that does not have a proper quote, specifically laying out the dollar amount that's going to need.
Is that usually what our protocol is? Yes. Like
Typically,
usually
we
it's
would
more
have
solid
something.
numbers, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
So if I might,
Mhm.
I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. What we wanted to do is we wanted to have Don participate this evening before he goes off on a leave of absence. And I wanted him to be able to answer any questions you might have related to DPW items. But I'll ask if you guys could hold off on voting until we can try to get more firm numbers. You are scheduled for a meeting on October 16th, at which time we'll hear from all of the other departments and can come up with more solid totals and funding sources for you. So tonight, if we could specifically focus on the projects themselves, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
One question for Jesse, I guess maybe for Dawn, but Jesse. The police department has a list of all their inventory and what its expected life would be. Does the DPW have something similar so that we can get a idea over the next 10 years, what we're going to be replacing?
We do have a list with expected life on
And you
these
talk
vehicles.
about this is going to last 10 to 15 years, and we seem to be getting that, but if the replacement cost is $200,000 or $300,000, it might be interesting to see if we're going to have a lull in 3 or 4 years or a spike in 5, and whether it
Yes.
does make more sense to do all these. We had a similar discussion with the police, and I asked the question, why aren't we buying more in a given year when they only wanted 2 cruises instead of 3, given that life cycle analysis?
We actually have it.
If I might,
We do have that in the
you
back.
do, in the DPW tab of your binder,
All right,
the
We have
first
it.
sheet
I don't find
does
it.
look like this.
Yes, Mary, we have it.
Perfect.
It's all there. Is there anything else? So there'll be no vote. We'll wait. till Mary
Still have
says-
stormwater, water.
Okay.
Sort of go through.
Okay. Okay, Don?
The next items, I think, up are 2 sewer items. Both are updating of controls at sewer stations, Old Bridge Lane Sewer Pump Station, which is a smaller station, therefore we're requesting 75,000, and Benelli Street Sewer Pump Station. As I mentioned with the Finance and Capital Improvements Committee, a lot of the determination is how much money we have in retained earnings. So when Mary tells us that, we will nail this down a little bit better. We still have yet to receive a quote, and the way things are going, I'm not sure that we ever will. It may just be appropriate the funds and see where the chips fall, because all of our contractors are so busy that to get them to sit back and say a quote for something to give us an idea of a cost, that's something that we will have to go out to bid, is not something they're really interested in spending a lot of their time doing. So it's not like $75,000 or $150,000. We can't just give them the work on a quote. We have to go out to bid. We just need a number for budgeting, so we're to a degree guessing. I think the numbers actually came from Peter Lampazona, who is retired as our facilities operator, and but he had extensive experience. So they're not a completely random guess, but they're not from a contractor or engineer that's what's out there. But it's needed work. If we have funds and retained earnings, we'll proceed to get them done.
So Don, to answer your question, my initial estimates for sewer retained earnings are going to be about 150,000.
We'll have to figure out where we want to go, because we don't have enough.
Right.
I didn't think we'd have enough for both, just throw them in there, so. We'll, Jesse and I and our new facilities superintendent will try to determine where we want to go first.
Don asking us a question. I can't tell.
Nope. Next item is the tree warden done.
All right, tree warden, last year with the request is $200,000, he got 50. Mike Burrow was comfortable that the 150 was a good number to proceed with. I think he actually has a little trouble again lining up contractors to spend that much, but we obviously have the need. If you drive around now before the leaves fall, because they all look dead soon. But we have a significant need to be cutting dead trees and branches that are overhanging the right of way.
No, no,
Okay.
no.
Okay, next.
Next.
Well 12, it was our best producing well. It started to produce very poorly. We did the preliminary analysis, which is necessary under the DEP regulations for a replacement well. And that indicates that we probably can get very close to what our 1996 capacity was when we put this in. The numbers I'm using are an extrapolation with interest based on our 2019 replacement of well number 7. That's $350,000. So definitely our top water priority. We're hoping November funding will give us time and the ability to get contractors in to get the thing constructed before the peak demand season, because without it, even on a wet year, we would have trouble keeping up with our demand. Next is well number 10. This is a new well development. This is the tip of the iceberg moving towards adding or building our next and last viable well site, the one that we're aware of anyway. We're asking for $540,000. This will get us up to the point that we'll be permitted. It includes significant permitting, testing, almost entirely driven by DEP regulation. The preliminary analysis, which is what we've done so far, to the tune of $100,000, indicates that the well site, which is east of High Street Fields, north of High Street and south of the railroad tracks, will generate in the neighborhood of 400 gallons per minute, which makes it a viable public water supply well.
Okay.
I think that's it for there.
That's it, right? Let's see.
What we didn't talk about with the financing is that we've got 2 water main projects on in fiscal 23. That's distribution system replace replace water mains and recondition the roadway for Cedar Hill and Standish Road. There's a long list on that sheet. All of them are good candidates. These are in pretty tough shape from a standpoint of road condition. Cedar Hill Road is not in as bad a shape as Standish, but it's one of those roads that it's asbestos cement pipe, when it bursts, explodes. And it's a very deep excavation, so it's dangerous for us to do repairs. So that moves us to vehicles, and we'll give that back to Jesse.
Okay, next up, we have a replacement for BW3. This is the water service truck. This is an F350 4x4 plow with utility body. Estimated useful life on this vehicle is 12 to 15 years. We estimate the cost replacement to be about $95,000. The current is a 2011 F350 4x4. Maintenance cost for the previous 2 years has been about $18,468. The comments on this vehicle is that it's high mileage, lots of rust and rot. And again, this is somewhat of a random estimate. The quote will be sent when the DPW receives the state bid quotation. Next up is a replacement for BW10. This is the water break truck. This is an F450 4x4 plow, long utility body. Again, on this, the estimated useful life is 12 to 15 years. We estimate the price on this to be about $105,000. Maintenance cost for this vehicle in the last 2 years has been about $3,272. Again, it's a F450 4x4 2013. Comments on this are to replace BW10. It has high mileage at 70,000 with lots of rust and rot, especially on the long utility body. Again, this is somewhat of a random estimate. The quote will be sent when the DPW receives a state bid quotation.
Question?
Yes.
So when we have the new DPW facility, do you expect that there's gonna be less body rot on some of these vehicles? Because they're not being left out. And the second part of the question would be, if you're gonna spend $18,000 on repairs at some point, do you say, why didn't we do this 2 years ago?
18,000, I think 14,000 of that was a transmission. So it's sort of a,
Yeah.
that comes up, you got to fix it in order to have the truck in the fleet. You need the truck in the fleet. So yeah, that was a, well, do we fix it? Well, we got another one we can replace it with? No, so we fix it.
Yep, okay.
Mhm.
I got you.
Yeah, and I mean, logically, you would think they would last longer, being indoors. What they all do, every vehicle in our fleet, other than a tree truck or a few others, is out there plowing with the salt and the sand, and that's the killer. It's not conducive of long life for a vehicle. And although we wash them after every storm, or when we have a gap between storms, it still is it's a hard battle to fight with the salt.
Yeah, you look at the mileage there, 33,000 miles. They don't have a lot of miles on them. They have a lot of years. But
I think the last thing we got is the Parks truck, Jesse.
All right, and the last vehicle here, this is to replace, my note here is P4. This was to upgrade the Parks truck from an F-250 to an F-350 with a plow. Estimated useful life on this was, again, 12 to 15 years. Estimated cost on this to be about $58,000. It's currently an F-250 4x4 Super Cab, 2008. Relatively inexpensive. The maintenance cost on this the last 2 years has been about $197. The comments on this are to replace P4, upgrade to add a plow truck to the fleet. Mechanics note 15 years old with mileage at about 113,000, getting up there on the mileage. Again, this is somewhat of a random estimate quote to be sent once the DPW receives the state bid quotation.
Are we saying the vehicle is not usable, or what's its value? I'm sorry, I missed that.
It is currently usable. It's just getting up there in the mileage, and again, it's got extensive rot and rust starting on it. So
I think one of the things you're looking at doing now when they buy new Parks vehicles, they're gonna be all-wheel drive, so there's no plow in the winter. So this one, the one that is rotting is just front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. It's not all-wheel drive, right?
correct, and it's a F-250, the current one as well. So this will give us a little bit more of a running
I
truck.
believe the school department was looking for a second vehicle that they didn't ask for because of their amounts, because they wanted to have something to plow the middle school parking lots. That it may be worthwhile to keep it around versus trading it in.
We generally don't get rid of the vehicles unless they're almost unregisterable. So even though we're replacing them in the fleet, it will probably be parked out back and with a plow on it if we can do it for that kind of purpose, or for the fact that when a snowstorm hits, doesn't mean that our fleet's going to survive without some dings and downtime. So we need something else to send a driver in.
okay.
I think that's it. I miss anything, Mary? We got to pee. We got the parks.
Any questions from the board? No, we're
Question.
not doing
What
it.
about some smaller ticket items like lawnmowers and things like that, separate from this because of their low value?
Jesse, I think we're good with Parks equipment, right? Didn't we replace a couple of lawnmowers? Is there anything on the list?
We did. We ended up getting newer lawnmower this past year, and just upgrading, repairing, maintaining what we have currently. So I think for right now that was good.
You did a good survey of the equipment.
Okay, good. Any additional questions? No, I think we're good. Don, Jesse, thank you very much.
Okay, am I all set now? Are we good? Signing off?
We're good.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
Don. Thanks,
Thank you very
Jesse.
much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Next, other business, bid awards contract.
Chairman, do you want me to?
Yeah, please.
I move that contract 2022-URDR underground storage tank removal and diesel tank replacement be awarded to the low bidder Green Site Services Group, Inc. of Bellingham, Mass. in the amount of $585,500.
Okay, we have a first, we have a second.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Do we have any discussion? None? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, next, old business town projects, running list. Michael, I know that the last time you'd asked to have the projects organized by in process and resolved and yet to tackle. I don't know if you've got a chance to look at it.
Well, to me, it was just a question of, we've got 7 months left in the cycle. And how do we want to break these down? I mean, if you think about if we did one a month, one a meeting, you know, what are our goals? Is it just to create a list, or is it to put things in the resolved category?
I think in process, if you look at the in process, they're not sitting, they're all, something's happening with all of them. So they're moving in that direction. Capital requests, you heard it tonight. Sunoco is a thorn in our side. You know, the Red Mill, I know we mentioned 2 meetings ago that MSBA application has been submitted, so that's in the works. Upcoming retirements, we've got pretty much everything in place on those.
When would we be meeting with those consultants?
We're gonna be first meeting in November, we'll be involved with them. The process in play for January.
Okay.
But I think we're doing the Primavera charter review, security camera. The ones that seem to be outstanding and some of the ones related to, I know the master plan is with these schools for the facilities.
For the bus situations, I think the school
It's
committee,
resolved,
yeah.
yeah.
So Dennis, the median properties, I heard when Don was going through the list, allocating so much funds, we haven't heard back from me, and then
We have.
we haven't.
We have not. We did send a notice with the appraisal, saying that it was our expectation, our understanding that you're gonna be donating these, so we haven't heard to the contrary, but we're following up on
When
that.
was that letter sent?
I'm gonna say it was sent out when the appraisals went out, which was, I'm gonna say at least 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay, and not a word.
Not a word, but we can
Okay.
follow up on that. It doesn't mean, you know, it certainly doesn't mean no, and he made it clear that it was something he would do either way. And, right,
Do we have that in writing or just
no, Michael,
verbal?
would you say that that's the case, that we pretty much had committed to that?
he committed to it, but that was before the
Yeah.
vote, and
Yeah.
whether he reneges on it.
I thought
Yeah,
he
But he
did-
has gone into radio
he did
silence.
He did recommit after though, I'm pretty sure.
We do, that matter is on the planning board's agenda for their first meeting in October, the median properties and talking about, you know.
Right
other
up to the
next steps
bridge.
to look at, yeah.
Yeah.
No, right. Right up-
With the neighbors.
Yeah. with the
involved.
neighbors, exactly.
So the meetings with the neighbors?
No, the meeting is just generally speaking, do we want to look at, does the planning board want to get involved in a subcommittee to take a look at that and certainly include the neighbors
Yeah.
at that point if they do. I know that talking with Bill O'Connell, he thinks it's a good idea.
It's still
to
the
take a look
DOT
at it.
situation hanging over the neighbor's head, and how much land they're gonna take from those neighbors.
So, yeah, we'll see. a lot.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a question.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how these things got categorized to in-process resolved.
Dennis and I did it.
Okay, so I was the person that brought up town council versus select board, and
Oh,
it says
yeah.
no on
I
there,
thought we
which
talked about that.
We did.
That's why, no?
we did when?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't there, was I?
Oh.
I don't remember
Um,
being part of that. So I was willing to look into like what's involved. I know it's a big question.
Mhm.
I just know towns around us have that versus select board. So I didn't know what it meant when it says no on there. What does that mean?
Well,
We're
it
not
wasn't,
interested.
it probably, I think what it was is it wasn't something the Charter Commission was going to tackle as far as that would be the elimination of town meeting,
Right.
essentially, and getting into that kind of big picture change in form of government. I mean, you'd be doing away with, most towns around us have a select board form of government with the exception of Franklin.
Right.
Just about all have town meeting and select board. So certainly it's something, you know, if you felt strongly about and you wanted to put
It's-
together a
I just was
subcommittee or
more
something.
annoyed that it just said no.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's
me.
my
I'm
reason
sorry.
for bringing
That
it
was
up
just like
tonight.
my, sorry.
It's
That's
more
just-
of a, it was more of a, what was meant to be a wish list, and I'm not
Okay.
accusing or
Yeah.
upset.
I think it was because
if
it
we're
wasn't moving with the charter process, charter
Okay.
commission process. Sorry.
That was kind of my
That's fine.
like,
Get closure. Let's move through this.
no,
I understand.
no,
worries.
that was just like my notes, you know what I mean? Like
I
it was
gotcha.
nothing formal. This
Okay.
is not formal at all.
No.
Right,
This is just
right.
like a
No, I understand.
working list.
I got you.
Okay. And with typos.
I did not point those out.
That was me.
Oh, no boring this fiscal year.
Yeah.
So are we going to take action on the yet to tackle, or like what's our?
Well,
to
I
your
guess my
point,
only
Michael, I
question is,
think-
would you break down the in-process list by
What's actually done.
targeted resolution date? I mean, if you were to
Okay.
say that, for instance, the school project for Red Mill, that the next step might be spring of 23, final resolution 2025.
Yeah, keep in mind, I would do that, but keep in mind, I'd just be going to talk to the superintendent and he would give me that date because they drive that. You know,
No, and I
if
think
anything,
that in the getting the word out would be interesting to say that, you know, it gets annoying, I think, when people go to social media and other things and you say,
what's happening.
you want to say, I'm sorry, you're misinformed if you notice that information is publicly available. I don't know how social media can.
Or maybe you break it down, what it is, what's the next step, desired date.
Because
type thing.
obviously some of them, like the capital requests, I mean, it's something that we do for many town meetings. So that one, you could argue is done, but I hear what you're saying, revamp basketball court and playground at middle school.
Mhm.
That's really a part of the school committee's master plan right now.
Yeah. But I think
I'd love
there's
to see
some.
those.
Some people, I mean, I'm not speaking for the school committee, but some people want to see certain things done, but they also have to weigh that against other things.
Mhm.
And there may be alternate funding than ARPA funding versus school budget funding.
Sure, but I mean, is that something that, I know you'd like to see it done, I'd love to see
I'd love to see
basketball
it.
courts, but is
I'd
that a
love to see a whole new
priority?
playground
for the
over
board?
there.
You know,
Yeah.
that, you know. So, I think that's what, you know, not unlike,
Well, you and I talked about the ARPA funding. One question was, when is the drop dead date for spending?
yeah, I think commitment is 24 and spent by 26, and Mary's still there, is that right?
Yep.
Mary?
That's correct. December 31st, 2024.
2024, because Michael had said that he had heard in one community, they had actually set funds aside for new fields or repair of.
I won't say the town, but
No,
so one town had 2 turf fields and they set aside 500,000 for each of the 2 turf fields, knowing that they were going to have to replace them in the next 4 years.
So they would have to have a contract in hand by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. If we were gonna do something like that, I suppose.
That's correct.
Right.
That is
And
correct. It
whether
has,
the turf fields are in great shape and we shouldn't have to replace them until 2030 or beyond.
It was just an example.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's impressive, our turf fields
Yeah.
have held up. It's a credit to the, I know you got a lot to do with it as well, the maintenance on those fields.
Mhm.
It's just, because they talk 10 years was
Mhm.
the life. of it. But
Shocking
Actually, it was,
considering how much ends up on my bathroom
Yeah.
floor after each football
And
practice.
they
I put
So,
put more on.
30,000 pounds of infill back on that one.
actually, it's 8 to
5
10
pounds is
years
probably
was
in my
the
house.
Yeah.
suggested life expectancy.
Mhm.
Okay, but yeah, we can definitely get some expected dates on there, and I'll talk with the school superintendent on some of them, and some of them will be ready to move. And
If you
unfortunately,
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was saying the South Main Street, obviously they're out there working, and we have asked them, and Don's asked them as recently as late last week for their schedule. Obviously, they're not working for us, they work for the state Mass DOT, so we're communicating with Mass DOT as well.
And I was just gonna say, if you see something on that list that you want, like at a specific meeting or at the next meeting, just let me know, and I can get whoever needs to speak on that particular item, and like on the yet to tackle or in process or whatever.
Thank you.
All right.
So just shoot me an email or whatever.
New business. Mrs. Grant, you said you had some new business?
Yes, so I chatted with Mary a little bit after last week's meetings, and I was thinking about ways that we could kind of streamline a little bit of this capital review, because it tends to be a lot of meetings. And then some committees are trying to meet jointly, and it's definitely not the way to do it with some committees anymore. And I'm wondering if it's a possibility to next year going forward to have a meeting in the fall, similar to what we do with our budget meetings in the winter, where we have a day or a Saturday or whatever, where everyone comes in, presents all their capital requests. Everyone hears them at the same time, gets to ask their questions at the same time, hears all the answers at the same time. But then each individual board and committee can vote as they need to vote down the line. This way, we're not having department heads present 3 and 4 times to different committees. And then each other committee hears all the questions that the other boards have. It makes sense to me to do it this way, especially that that's how we do the budget workshop. And then if we have specific questions, maybe we can reach out to a department head after that. But I was feeling personally after last week's meeting, very taxed. It was feeling unorganized. It was just not feeling very productive.
After the finance capital meetings?
Yes. And I just kept thinking there's got to be a better way to do this. And I don't know why we can't have a capital meeting like we have our budget meeting. That's just my new business.
It makes sense to me, but I'm not involved in that process, so I can't lend anything, but to me, if you're having meeting, if Dawn and everyone is presenting 3 and 4 times, it's taxing on them. It's taxing on CIC and finance. That makes sense. Mary, do you have any thoughts?
It is very difficult when, department heads are presenting 3 and 4 times, and then there are certain questions that are being asked that are very good questions and would be beneficial for other boards to hear that information. A small part of my apprehension with that, though, is when we do have these long meetings, and you know that with a lot of capital projects, there can be a lot of detail. The departments that come at the end of that discussion, oftentimes people are exhausted, and I don't want to do a disservice to those departments at the end of the agenda. That would be my only concern, because we know that it takes quite a bit of time to get through DPW requests and school department requests in particular. But anything that we can do to facilitate swift review of this information for not only our staff, but also all of our volunteer boards and committees, any improvements we can make to the process would certainly be beneficial.
So can I ask you a question about a process? So Don was here tonight and he had several vehicles that he needs to put out to bid. Can't that process start earlier? If he knows he's going to need to replace those vehicles, start that process early to at least get an accurate quote, so that when he does present, he has everything ready to go, so that it's not drawn out and not, coming back. And this just might be, I'm just asking that. I agree, I like the idea, but maybe if we're schools taxing and DPW's taxing, we have 2 workshops, not 1, 2 Saturday mornings, but make sure that DPW at least has all of their information they need to move
And
forward.
typically Don does a
Typically he
good
does,
job. Again, it's just the new world that we're in
The
right
timing,
now.
right? Yeah,
Well, yeah, it's right now. Hopefully
Yeah.
things are gonna settle
Change.
down, but in the future, I'm sure you're gonna see department heads looking for those quotes earlier.
Yeah,
It's just, it's, and they're all having the same problem. And I know capital and finance don't necessarily want to meet at the same time anymore. So theoretically, what you would have next year is school committee or library trustees. Bernadette would be presenting to the library, then to capital, then to finance, then
Why
to
can't
select.
capital and finance meet at the same time?
It's just.
We can talk after if you'd like.
Just, yeah. Different issues for different
Well,
boards.
it's
as
a
far
lot
as
of
what they're
people.
evaluating.
It
Yeah.
worked at one point. It no longer serves its purpose.
But maybe there's some other, we can certainly, maybe that's one of the things that we put on our list for coming up with a better solution.
well, that is,
for-
I would think
That way
so.
we can bring in capital, FinCom, and, yeah, same with school committee, when you think Peter goes to his school committee, then to finance, capital, and select board. So there's an example. of
Yeah.
Four
Yeah.
presentations, and not to mention that we sit with them as well, so they're really sick of it. after
Yeah.
We meeting, Mary and I.
Mary or Dennis, do you think that we have an appropriate handle on our inventory of vehicles to the point of before we have major repairs? I know we do it for police, but to say the DPW is gonna have a truck, instead of they're gonna have it for 10 years, they're going to have it for 6. And then it's gonna get passed to the school department, who'll use it for 4 more, and then we'll retire it. So that we're always buying the newest vehicles for certain departments. And I know inspectional services uses vehicles that, I don't think we should ever be buying new vehicles for inspectional services. But I also don't think they should be driving around 15-year-old vehicles.
So the police do turn them over every
Yeah.
2 years, 2 to 3 years. I think it's 3 years.
So
Right.
you're suggesting is that we get ahead of where we are right now.
Well,
as
For a
opposed to-
department looking to make a capital purchase, if they knew they were definitely getting a vehicle in 2 years, because it is our policy to pass it down no matter what condition it's in, because someone else can make use of it. Because the Parks Department may not be as hard on a vehicle as a plow. There's something there to it, and I'm probably not.
Yeah, I don't know that, I don't know that we can unequivocally say that every vehicle is going to be handed down. It's just, you're basically moving a problem from one department to another. They're asking for a replacement for a particular reason. I think our department heads do a great job and make every effort to try to repurpose vehicles and make them available to other departments where there is a need. But one of the things that we talked about during this particular cycle is that fleet schedule that's in the DPW section of your binder. That is a roadmap that they have been working towards building to show those future replacement schedules. So I think what we need to do is we need to focus a little bit more closely on that fleet schedule and really start to look at those replacement dates that are years out and have those conversations.
So Mary, to that end, do you think that it's the policy of most towns to run vehicles into the ground or to give up on vehicles while they have certain value and replace them?
So in my experience, the communities I've worked with, they tend to run things into the ground.
And the reason I ask that question is at a certain age, you are going to have $10,000 transmission repairs. Whereas if we stopped short of that, we still would have gotten value out of that vehicle. Maybe we got $30,000 out of it and saved ourselves $18,000 in repairs, albeit we bought another vehicle for $90,000. There are people out there that stay on a lease and they own it for 3 years. There's other people that own it for 12.
And the what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a mechanic, but I don't necessarily characterize a vehicle as unusable just by having to fix it, the transmission. So it depends on the purpose of the vehicle. And sometimes those repairs will extend the useful life of a vehicle that we can then hold on to it for another couple years.
I believe that it's difficult on the DPW side, more difficult for them to anticipate, because who knows? What if you have couple of light winters? But we know the police, we know they're gonna rotate those vehicles every couple of years. I just think it's a little harder. Or maybe we're talking more about the smaller pickup trucks, and the F-250s and the F-350s, as opposed to the big giant plow, right? Trucks.
The only thing that strikes me is that when a vehicle fails, we are not buying it the next week. We are without it for 9 months until we get funding resolved.
So you're suggesting having sort of vehicles on the bench?
I think they
Or
do
more.
look forward, like Don's asking for vehicles, knowing how long the delay is, and that's why he's asking for them now. I know fire has done the same thing. The fire chief does a good job with his vehicle schedule, requesting in advance. That they all gotten used to the 1 year delay as far as delivery goes. So I don't think we're at a critical point, certainly not in DPW, but I understand what you're saying. One of these vehicles would make a decent plow for the high school to be able to plow their lot. One of the small pickups that Parks pick up may very well be the one.
Anything else? Any other new business? Anything? Dennis, you have anything? to add? No?
John mentioned the project review committee did approve, Mass DOT did approve the project from basically Walmart all the way to the Midway town line.
That's great.
One of the things we committed to was always having a project on the tip list. So we got one approved, on to the next one. It seems that one that got approved, we were just talking about it, a short time ago, it was 5 years ago. So we get a project of that magnitude done every 5 years, we're doing real good.
Do we have any word about the grant yet
No.
for Hartford Ave?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's been a lot of lobbying going on. I'll say our representative's been working overtime on that, so appreciate all the work that he's done.
Yeah, I know Secretary Keneally wanted to get DOT involved and thought they should
Even they have.
be involved, so that's good.
Did you have a question?
I was gonna ask, you said from the Hartford Ave all the way to Medway line, that's just the paving or just a?
It would be widening sidewalks,
Okay.
much like they're doing on South Main Street. So,
Okay.
so that project, the process is the project review committee at Mass DOT. We have to do some preliminary work,
Yeah, yeah.
submit it to them, request that it be included on the state's within the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And they have their TIP list, which is their Transportation Improvement Program. All the roads that are in the greater Boston area were included in that grouping, the Boston area or MPO. So they have a certain amount of money every year to spend, and if you don't get your project in there, you'll never get any money to state money to use to fix these roads. We were successful with Pulaski Boulevard, South Main Street was funded with this, and hopefully we know eventually this project will get funded. We'll push hard to get it down. The sooner you have everything in place, meaning the design, the sooner they'll give serious consideration to it. So, yeah, but it will be widening sidewalks,
And like the bike lanes and stuff, that's part of the whole thing. The bike
Pedestrian
lanes, yeah.
lanes.
Yeah, have to.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right. Any further questions? You're welcome. All right, seeing that we have satisfied our agenda, I will call for a motion.
So we'll.
Second.
Opposed? We have a first, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Mary,